Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What is up, Knight fans? Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you here for the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. This is episode number 12. Recording this on Wednesday night, October the 19th, 2016. And what a busy week it has been, Eric, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's the understatement of the year. We got a few things to talk about. Let's just go on record on that.
Yeah, well, we got a lot on the agenda tonight. We're going to talk, obviously, about the football devastating loss at home to Temple. We're going to break that down and look ahead to the game against UConn, the civil conflict, as it were. We are also going to go on and on and on and on and on about the Big 12 thing that all went down, because we finally have our chance to get on the record about that. And we have lots of news on the Olympic sports front, particularly with volleyball. Huge weekend for volleyball just concluded, and another huge weekend coming up. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon and follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget to also look us up on Facebook at Black and Gold Banneret. That's banner with an E-T at the end. And also, don't forget, if you haven't yet, subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Leave us a rating on there. Tell your UCF friends all about us. Give us a subscription. And, hey, send us a message, too, if you want to as well. So more than happy to take some listener mail. If you get the opportunity, you can send that to us on our Facebook page as well. So, well, what a busy week it has been for UCF football, Eric Lopez. UCF in general. We will start with the game against Temple, homecoming. Boy, things were looking great for UCF early on as they jumped out to a 25-7 lead after the first basically 18 minutes of the game. Big plays all over the place. Traquan Smith with a 55-yard touchdown catch. Mackenzie Milton's 63-yard touchdown run made it 25-7, but then all of a sudden things started coming apart for the Knights as they gave up a touchdown before the half to Temple, and then a couple field goals, and then with 1 second to go, Temple, P.J. Walker, who now goes by Phillip apparently, an 8-yard touchdown pass to Keith Kirkwood that capped off a 4-play, 70-yard drive in 31 seconds with no timeouts to knock off UCF 26-25 and send the Knights down to 3-3, 1-1 in the league. Temple now above 500 at 4-3, 2-1 in the league. Eric, we talked coming into this game about how UCF could have made it a 2-horse race in the Eastern Division by handing what would have been Temple's second loss in the conference to them. Everyone else except for UCF and USF would have had 2 losses, and both of the Florida teams would have been undefeated in conference. As it is now, these two teams are tied in the loss column, and now Temple has the game in hand. USF, obviously, still with the advantage. They're undefeated in the Eastern Division. Was this a disaster?
No, I know some people feel that way. They feel that UCF it's a game that kind of slipped away, but I thought Temple made some nice adjustments. Give them credit. I thought Temple's defensive line outplayed UCF's offensive line, gave them some problems, especially in the second half.
UCF led for 58 minutes and 12 seconds in this game and still lost.
Yeah, but they didn't put them away. And Temple kind of hung in there, and then in the second half, they kind of controlled the tempo. What was it? Time of possession, Temple had the ball for 22 minutes, I think, in the second half.
Yeah.
UCF couldn't get anything going on offense, Jeff. And the thing about this offense, okay, anybody that follows this offense, if this offense doesn't move the chains, it's going to be off the field real quick, which means your defense is going to be on the field right away. And that's what you saw in the second half result. Some miscues there. And yet UCF defensively, I thought did a pretty good job because they kept holding Temple to field goals, even though they had lengthy drives. And they had some issues with those two backs, who I think are very talented for Temple, by the way. They're advertised. Reddick on the defensive line for Temple is advertised. But at the same time, when you give a team so many different possessions, they're going to eventually cash in. And boy, credit to Walker, who really didn't throw the ball well in the entire game until that last 30-second drive. And I don't know what clicked into him, but he executed that perfectly.
You're right.
I've seen anybody. And give him credit. That was a heck of a drive. It's one of the best 30-second drives I've seen in person ever.
That was a senior drive, man. That was really a senior drive because I'm going to do the math real quick in my head here. Prior to that drive, Walker, his statistics for the game, he was 8 of 20 for 97 yards and 1 touchdown and 1 interception.
Right.
On that drive, 4 for 4, 70 yards, and a touchdown. That was a senior performance by Philip Walker. To play as poorly as he did, like you said, and then when with the chips on the table to do that against our defense, you got to tip your hat to him, senior quarterback, and man, am I glad we don't have to see him again.
Yeah, and give him credit. And I know some people are were questioning the play calling there in the final UCF drive. Were they too conservative? Look, my thing was, you don't want to turn the ball over in that situation. You definitely don't want to throw the football. I think UCF would try to get the first down, and they did, and they got the punt. I mean, who would have thought Temple could go 70 yards that quick without a timeout, and they did. So, it's a learning experience. It's a young team, young coaching staff, and certainly it's a team that's still going to be up and down, and that's what young teams tend to do. They're going to look good at moments, and in moments they're not going to look good. And in a way, maybe, that's part of the 3-3 of the season, and that's part of the process. So I don't know. I mean, could there be some things you could, nitpick and question? I guess. But let's be honest, Jeff, if Temple throws an incompletion on that last pass or two and UCF gets away with a win, I'm not sure how much criticism would be going on right now. So, while it's disappointing, I think from a Knights perspective, you just have to learn from it. And when you have a freshman quarterback, a freshman running back, and I think you told me it's more of a freshman first-year head coach is like a freshman with a young staff. You're going to make some mistakes, and things aren't going to go smoothly all the time.
Yeah, I felt like listening to the post game that Scott Frost. It sounded in his voice like he kind of blamed himself for how the second half unfolded. Here's Scott Frost.
Last game was one of the toughest losses I've been a part of. Jumped out to good start, played really well. Guys made plenty of plays to win the game. We just were one play short, and there was about 40 chances to do it. And we got to find a way to get over that hump. But we're looking forward to getting back on the field again.
And going back to it, it felt like they felt like they took the foot off the gas pedal when they got the big lead, because now some of us weren't expecting Mackenzie Milton to start, and he played. He started the whole game, played the whole game, and it felt like they were trying to both run some clock, albeit unsuccessfully, and kind of preserve him to an extent, especially in the fourth quarter. And that didn't work. I thought that the defense actually did a great job, and you mentioned this, holding Temple to field goals. Otherwise, this thing could have been a runaway for the Owls in the second half. The Knights defense actually kept them in the game. Milton for the game was 13 of 22 for 210, 2 scores and a pick.
A bad interception. It was a miscommunication with him and the receiver. The receiver was going on a go route, and
Yeah.
he threw the pass. And I
threw it
wonder
a little bit too inside.
Yep.
It felt like he sort of underthrew that ball in terms of its trajectory. I thought from what I was seeing.
And I think maybe that goes into the part of the strategy in the fourth quarter. You got a freshman quarterback. You don't want him to make a mistake with a fumble or a sack, and they were getting, he was taking a lot of sacks too.
Yeah.
Unnecessary sacks and that's the thing he's got to learn. I don't think he's got a pocket presence there yet. He took some bad sacks too. And I think that all of that maybe contributed to what maybe was perceived as taking the gas, the foot off the gas pedal, if you will. But, they had 12 penalties too, which hurt them on some drives, both offensively and defensively. So, I think it was just a lot of combination of things that just didn't break. And, you gave Temple a chance, and I was nervous. I was watching that whole game, and I'm thinking, man, if Walker can just make some throws for Temple here, UCF could be in real trouble. And unfortunately, he did. He chose the last drive of the game to make those throws.
And he had to make, with no timeouts, he had to make all 4 of those throws. One of them goes incomplete, the game's over. From UCF's perspective, the running game kind of did betray them in this game. Only 86 net yards rushing on 36 attempts.
A lot of that because of the sacks.
Right, 86 yards lost because of the sacks, and compared to 172 yards gained. And I actually hate the fact that they do that at the stupid box score in the NCAA. Come on, get your act together. But that was in the second half. It just didn't work. So now the conference standings look like this: USF at the top, 3-0. In the East, at least. Navy and Memphis still undefeated in the top of the West. But in the East, it's USF undefeated 3-0. Temple is 2-1. The Knights are 1-1. Everyone else with 2 or 3 losses. UConn has 3 losses. Cincinnati 0-3. East Carolina 0-2. And lo and behold, it's the first of 2 consecutive road games for the Knights, as they've had now their only home date for the month of October against Temple. That's an L. So now they have to go on the road for 2 straight tough ones, UConn and Houston. And coming up is UConn, 3-4 overall, 1-3 in the conference. Bob Diaco's team is struggling. Looking at what they've done in their last 5 games, they lost to USF. They defeated Cincinnati, but they've given up a lot of points. They gave up 42 to Houston at Houston. Lost to Syracuse, 31-24, and then they did have a win against. Things look pretty good for them after that win against Virginia, 13-10 for the Huskies. But since then, 42, 20, and 42 points given up. And coming off the USF loss, now they come home for the civil conflict, which I still can't believe people think that's a thing. And these 2 teams coming off of losses, so. Hartford hasn't exactly been kind to the Knights in the past, as we saw a couple years ago. What do you see from this game, Eric? This is going to be a tough bounce back for UCF, I think.
It is, and we'll learn a lot about this team and how they handle that going on the road. And look, you look at the schedule now, 3-3. I don't think you can even talk division at this point. You got to focus about each game, and the question becomes, how do you get to that magic number of bowl eligibility, which is 6 wins? If you look at the schedule, you got at Connecticut, at Houston, you've got then Tulane, you've got Cincinnati, then Tulsa, then at USF. So
those 3 games before USF at home too, by the way. So can't forget that. That's going to
correct. So let's be honest, they're going to be a heavy underdog at Houston. And they're going to be a heavy underdog, probably a heavy underdog, maybe 7-8 point underdog to USF, I would guess, on those 2 road games. So if you believe, and I think many believe before the season that they would lose those 2 games, that puts you at 5 losses. So the question becomes, the rest of the games you can only afford to drop 1 game, and that we're not even talking about a very good Tulsa team that I like a lot. Gave Houston all they could handle this past weekend in the conference.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's going to be a shootout, and that's going to be, I think, UCF's toughest home game. So that makes this game big, because if you win this game, I think it shows that you bounce back from a tough loss, and then you go back to 4-3, and I think you're still feeling pretty good with some confidence going to Houston. If you lose this game, you drop to 3-4. Now you got to go to Houston, and then now all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh. you're kind of in trouble here, maybe going 3-5 coming home against Tulane. So this is a very key game to see where we're at for the season and where it's going against the UConn team that's clearly given UCF some fits. And over the last couple of years, including 2 years ago, a very bitter loss for UCF. Everybody remembers that. That was really Bob Diaco's first big win in his first year there at UConn. UCF was a huge favorite. And it was a weird day in Hartford. Now, for those that don't know,
rainy and disgusting that day.
Sleet. And I remember I've spoken to Terrence Plummer, the linebacker for the Knights, who's now obviously been bouncing around with the practice squads with the Vikings and so forth. And I spoke to him about that game. I want to say it was about a year ago. I hung out with him, and he talked about that's the one bitter loss of his career because, they didn't have the right cleats, and they just didn't, as a senior, he was disappointed that they didn't do a better job taking that game seriously. Because if you remember, if they don't lose that UConn game, odds are they win the conference outright, not share the conference title. And they feel like they would have played in the major all-access bowl game that year, possibly in Atlanta. Instead, that year it ended up going to Boise, who beat Arizona because that was UCF's second loss. They had lost to Penn State earlier in the season. So that's a very bitter loss for a lot of UCF fans and the players, and talking to Terrence about it. So they have to be ready because, I don't expect great weather in Hartford. I don't know if it'll be as bad as it was that year, but it could be. It could be rainy. It could be windy. It's going to be ugly. And how does a young team handle that, especially a team that's had some issues with the fumbles and in particular the quarterback, Milton?
Yeah, I was just taking a look at. By the way, Terrence Plummer actually just signed with the CFL just recently. Got some news on him.
Thank you. Good for him.
Vegas is expecting a low-scoring game. The over/under right now is 48. Although the predicted score on oddshark.com is basically 17-14 in favor of UConn. So they're expecting a very low-scoring affair. Knights are favored by 4 in this game. Interestingly enough, UCF this season on the road, 2-1 against the spread. Overall, or 2-0 against the spread away, I should say this year, and 2-1 overall against the number. So, and at least that's in terms of their last 3 games, 2-1 against the number. So, 4-2 against the number, by the way, overall. 4-point favorite on the road. That always makes me a little bit nervous, but. I think that the key is going to be that UConn has struggled, I think, in particular at the quarterback position. Bryant Sheriff's their quarterback this year at over 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 picks. Not spectacular. He's shown some moments, but really hasn't been overly great. I do think that UConn is susceptible to giving up some turnovers in particular. And, again, the environment is going to be something that UCF is going to have to overcome because this is probably not going to be a fast track at Rentschler Field. So, again, they may have to slog it out kind of a little bit, which I don't think our offense is particularly used to doing. Though I still would keep UCF as the favorite, but this one makes me nervous.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation. I've been there. There's a nice bowling alley, by the way, by the stadium if your fans are traveling out there for the game.
Let me tell you how excited everyone's going to be to go to a bowling alley after the game.
I'm not saying, after the game. I'm saying maybe the night before, because let's be honest, it's not like, trust me, downtown Hartford, not the biggest, atmosphere.
Not a very bustling metropolis.
No. I mean, it's funny. I was just there in April. Because I was with UCF softball. They played in Storrs, Connecticut. And that was the series where I was introduced to snow for the first time in person. They got snowed out. I'm not even kidding. They got snowed out on the Sunday game, got rained out on Saturday, snowed out on Sunday. So I actually got to play with snow on that Sunday. And then we bussed to Hartford because that's where we're flying out of, and we drove by the stadium. And I don't know if that's important to acknowledge for people that may not be aware of this. Connecticut, actually, their football, they play in Hartford, not in stores. So that was very interesting. And then we just hung out at a bowling alley, getting ready for our flight. And I think there's some nice food areas changed there. But look, I mean, it's a tricky spot. How do they deal with the elements? Will be fascinating. Turnovers could be a key. Now, the good news is, again, though, I think this defense is playing well, and I think the key here is for the defense to force some turnovers on UConn and give them, kind of fall behind the eight ball. I don't think UConn's a type of team that's going to come from behind. UConn is a team that has to have the lead early. They're not going to come back like Temple did. And I feel like if UCF were to get the lead early, they can pound them with the running game. And I've noticed, Jeff, I don't know if you've noticed this week, Coach Diaco, Connecticut, he's been very quiet. Like, they even asked him about the trophy, and now he's all of a sudden, like, kind of brushing off those questions. He's not talking about it, which is very bizarre. And here, as you hear it right here, he is, I tell you, there may not be an opposing coach, a bigger fan of this UCF program and admirer than Coach Diaco.
I thought Coach O'Leary's teams were, and obviously the proof's in the pudding there. He won a tremendous amount, and he had great football teams. And you could see that on tape. Electric playmakers, great effort, great toughness, belief, innovative systems in all three phases. And Coach Frost has done the same thing. So he's lockstep with the DNA of the program and has taken over. And it's it doesn't look like they've really lost a lot from Coach O'Leary's overall program.
Oh, come on, Diaco. You're the one who started it with this stupid trophy. Let's stand by it here a little bit here. Where is that? Where's the picture in the UConn office? I want to know where that thing is.
What did you think of that clip of him saying that the Scott Frost program is basically where the George O'Leary program left off? How about that?
What does that even mean?
He's always been a huge admirer of O'Leary. That's why he did the trophy. He wanted to, replicate what UCF has done, but yet, as you just heard on the clip, he talks about how, all these great athletes and this stuff that O'Leary had under O'Leary, and then he's like, yeah, Scott Frost seems to pick up right where the O'Leary program was, and they're about the same. I'm like, did he miss the 0-12 year?
Did he forget that we went 0-12 last year?
Apparently so. It was great. I loved it.
I don't get it, man. This guy is so out of left field. I don't get it anymore.
But he is. But one thing I will say in his credit, he's a very good defensive mind, and that'll be interesting. I'm fascinated. Look at Notre Dame. They haven't been the same defensively since he's left, in my opinion. So, and he's done a pretty good job at Connecticut. Let's be honest. He got him to a bowl game last year and stuff like that. So, I'm curious to see what he comes up with for this UCF offense, and how does Scott Frost and they come up as a counter to what Connecticut will bring to the table. I would be very fascinated to see that on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be a very good game. I'm expecting this to be a good one. Kickoff is set for noon Eastern time, and it's on ESPN News. And do we have a TV crew for that game, Eric?
Well, I know that Rini Ngolia will be your color analyst for that game. He did the UCF Temple game. So, in fact, I chatted with him about that. It was funny because I chatted with him during the Temple game. I think it was at halftime, and he talked about it. It just kind of worked out, kind of unique circumstances that he got to do UCF back-to-back weeks, just like he did last year. Last year, he worked the Houston UCF game and then had to go to Cincinnati and work the UCF Cincinnati game. It just kind of works out, he says. It's not like prearranged or anything. It just kind of worked out that way for him. He was, so he will be in store. He's going to be in Connecticut, and he'll get his second week in a row that he will see UCF in person going up against Connecticut. And, that he does a great job. So that'll be a good broadcast. I'm not too concerned with that. I know some people, for some reason, always obsess about those kind of things. But I'm not. Like I said, I think he'll do a very good job in that broadcast. And look, it is what it is. I mean, UConn The good news is it's a noon game, which I do like. Like, it could be worse. It could be like a Saturday night and the weather is really cold, you know.
Right.
So while I think they're going to have some weather to deal with, I don't think it'll be as bad as it might have been, say, if it was a night game, for example. By the way, he's working with Mike Corey.
Yeah, Mike Corey.
Will be
is the play-by-play guy.
So, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated to see how they react. I'm not going to pretend and think that I know, because I got to be honest. I've been following UCF football off and on since about 97, 98. This is probably one of the more unpredictable UCF teams. It's a very up and down team that, it's a half to half situation. I'm not comfortable saying, they're definitely going to do this or do that in this kind of an environment. And, that's why I'm fascinated to see how they react to this.
Weather, by the way, for East Hartford on Saturday, there's a front blowing through the day before on Friday, because the high in East Hartford was actually nice on Friday, high of 73. Then the front blows through, scattered showers, high of 54, low of 39. So, and it's actually going to get colder as the day goes on. And the problem there is not just going to be the 60% chance of showers. The problem there is also going to be the wind.
Yep.
19 miles an hour predicted. So it's going to come down to the running game once again for UCF. So again,
UConn, by the way.
News.
UConn, by the way, averaging 129 yards given up on the ground. That's 26th best in the country. UCF's 33rd in the country in rushing, over 200 yards a game. Very interesting about Diaco's team, by the way. They don't do a lot. They don't get a lot of penalties. You realize they're number 2 in the country, averaging only 29 yards a game in penalties. I'm concerned about that, and that's why I'm bringing that up. I'm concerned because we've seen a lot of penalties from this UCF team, and UConn plays a clean game penalty-wise, so that's a concern. Keep that in mind. Penalty yards to me are kind of like hitting yards because it costs you field position or costs you opportunities. I think those two categories I just brought up, keep that in mind as you watch this game.
Yeah, we were pretty undisciplined against Temple, and part of that I think does have to do with the whole UCF fierce thing, is that you kind of want the players to play at 180 miles an hour, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes like that. I don't think they've been mental mistakes. I think they've been mistakes of effort for the most part. There have been some mental mistakes, but that is another thing we're going to have to keep an eye on. Noon, kickoff, ESPN News, be there, UCF and UConn. All right, stick around. When we get back here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast, we finally put an end to the stupid Big 12 story that has wasted 2 years of our lives. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fegley.
This is Trey Strelka with the UCF Nightline Podcast, the original, the #1 rated UCF sports podcast.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's UCF_Nightline and at www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com.
Be sure to subscribe to us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
And when you get sick of listening to these guys, make sure you look us up.
Don't forget, that's the UCF Nightline Podcast. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Welcome back. It's the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. I'm Jeff Sharon. He's Eric Lopez, and we're moving on from football to talk, things that get punted. How about that? Big 12. We knew this day would come. Actually, you know what, though? Maybe we didn't quite know this day would come. But anyway, the Big 12 announced that last Monday was the big day, right, Eric?
Sure.
Everyone it was moving day in the Big 12. We were going to find out if expansion was going to happen, and just like we thought, nothing happened. No expansion at all. Individual teams schools apparently were not even discussed. The word coming out, Jake Trotter was actually there at the meetings of ESPN and was kind of given the blow-by-blow plan of what was happening. By the way, a couple of schools have actually already released their presentations, but the way it went down, they had the two consultant firms in the room for a little bit. They gave their presentation. 2 hours later on Monday, apparently the University of Texas president just leaves with his bags. followed 15 minutes later by the president of Texas Tech University. Everyone else kind of filters out, and word gets out that we didn't even really have a vote on anything. We just decided we're just not going to do this. So then, the commissioner of the Big 12, Bob Bowlesby, has to go through basically the walk of shame. They have to wait, first of all, 3 hours for this press conference that they scheduled at 5:30 that day. All
6:30 Eastern,
6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central, because and then they have to go through the whole rigmarole of calling all the schools and saying thanks for playing, but no one's coming in. David Boren, the president of Oklahoma, who is the one who actually got this whole sort of dog and pony show moving this summer by saying that they were going to consider expansion, and then he pulled back from it. Said there wasn't even any discussion of individual schools. Bowlesby himself said, I made one recommendation, that we should bring this process to closure, that we shouldn't kick the can down the road. So apparently, Big 12 expansion is, to quote Dom DeLuise, dead. D-E-D, dead. And credit to UCF, Danny White released his statement saying, "Hey, we're in the American Athletic Conference. We're committed to moving forward in the whole 9 yards." You know how that whole thing goes. But this has been. It turns out, as the reporting of what went down actually followed through. I want to know if you agree with me, because I think you do. This turned into not just a dog and pony show. It was an extortion racket. Because the Big 12 realized that with the way their TV contract is with Fox and ESPN, pro rata, which means if they add members, that means that they get to add money equivalent to that. So from that perspective, that's how they wanted to expand, was just a deliberate money grab, right? And
Correct.
Apparently the networks came out and said, we don't want you diluting the brand. And in addition to that, there aren't any official reports of this, but the idea right now is that Fox and ESPN are basically going to buy out the Big 12 from that pro rata clause in their contract, which accomplishes exactly what the Big 12 wanted. Now they get the championship game, which they've wanted, with less than 12 teams, and they get more money from the networks. And I'll tell you the truth. Like I said, this has been a fraudulent extortion racket from the very beginning. For 2 years, we've been covering the stupid story. It's been nothing but a waste of our time and our energy. Just a giant clickbait farm on the part of the Big 12. And for them to do this to these other teams, I'll tell you the truth. The Big 12 comes out much worse from this situation than any of the other schools who they flirted with, UCF included, all the way down. And these schools are going to remember this come NCAA voting time if there's ever something that comes up that the Big 12 wants. And the other people who's going to remember this is the networks. Because ESPN and Fox know that they've been party to an extortion racket here. And I'll tell you the truth. I wrote a couple weeks back, are we sure we want UCF in the Big 12? And, of course, a couple people holler at me on Twitter saying, yeah, are you dumb? Of course we do. Well, what about now? What about now that we've seen how this conference does business? What about now with what the next TV contract is going to look like? What about now when in 2025 this league goes under after Texas and Oklahoma and whoever else decide to leave for the Pac-16 or the Big Ten or whatever? What about now?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that I think this week was a good week for UCF because nobody got expanded. So I think UCF stays in a very strong league. I've gone on record in saying that I think the Big 12 is on borrowed time. I think the Big 12 is going their separate ways. I am in the belief, and I am in the camp, and I'm not alone in this, but I mean, I've talked to people in that region, multiple regions, and there are people in the media, in that outlet, that have said the same thing. I think Texas and Oklahoma are going to leave. Texas and Oklahoma are going to have all the options that they want. And so they're going to do whatever they want. I think Oklahoma is going to end up in the SEC. I think Texas is going to end up in the Big Ten. And I think some of the Texas schools know this, and the comparison I have made, I feel like this is a marriage that everybody knows it's headed for a divorce, and they're already thinking about seeing other people in the meantime and who they're going to see.
They're just staying together for the kids and because of the paycheck right now to keep the mortgage going.
Exactly. I believe that about 6 to 7 years, I believe Oklahoma and Texas will part ways, and I think the Texas schools, Texas Tech, TCU, and I'm going to throw this team, Houston, I think are going to campaign to go to the Pac-12. And the reason I say that is because I think the Pac-12, which their network has not been great so far, they want to push that into the market of Texas and the Dallas and Houston specifically, big markets. And I could see them. And I've said this, look at the Texas Tech future schedules. If you have a chance, Google it. Texas Tech's schedule, TCU's future schedule. They're already playing big Pac-12 teams. They're already in conversations with these Pac-12 schools. Trust me. You think that, that the future hasn't been brought up. Hey, we'll play in 2023. And, hey, you never know. We could play in the conference game, too. We love that trip. So, trust me.
Unbelievable.
People are already looking ahead. And I think what you saw is, I think everybody in resignation about that. Once, the network went down, that was not going to happen. ESPN told the Big 12, you're not going to get a Big 12 network out of this. Sorry.
Well, Texas is the one who told it. I'm pretty sure ESPN would love to get out from underneath that network right now.
Well, sure, right. And then when you saw David Boren, who's been very outspoken about this, start backpedaling, like, yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on this because, they couldn't come to terms on the teams. And the thing is, nobody cared. This is the thing. Nobody wanted to make this league better. They talk a good game. But, for example, like Houston clearly, from an on-the-field standpoint, helps that conference right now. That is not a very good football league. It's the 5th best league in football, at best. It's not in the ACC's range. It's not in the SEC's range. It's not in the Big 12 range.
I'll tell you the truth. I think the Big 12, in terms of overall quality of the conference for football, is a lot closer to the American than it is the other four. I agree.
And I would argue that the best team in the if Houston would beat most of those teams in the Big 12, and I think USF would have some success too, and others. So it's a very good basketball league, but it's not a great football league. The Big 12 is. The Power Four, the other major 4 conferences, I think surpass them, and I don't think it's a short-term thing either. So they don't want to improve that because Houston would have helped them from that standpoint.
Houston and UCF both would have helped him.
But they're all paranoid for a variety of reasons. They don't want Houston in the conference because they take our recruits away. Oh, God, what are we going to do?
That's a bunch of baloney. That's a bunch of garbage. Both of those, all those teams, it's not like they haven't discovered the state of Florida, for crying out loud.
Well, in the Florida thing,
and it's also like UCF doesn't get kids from Texas every once in a while either.
Correct.
Come on.
And the thing is, I think the Big 12 people are naive. I think they really thought they could get a big school like a Florida State to leave the ACC to go to the Big 12. Very arrogant, very naive.
Yeah, but then the ACC dropped their grant of rights on their head, and that was that.
Correct. So I think the Big 12 is going to go bye-bye. I think Oklahoma is going to the SEC, probably with Oklahoma State or West Virginia, depending on how the politics work in that. Texas and Kansas would be my prediction going to the Big 10. And I think I could see a TCU, Houston, Texas Tech, and either Baylor or somebody like Colorado State become an option for the Pac-12 to expand by 4. And then at that point, I think a West Virginia could be in play if the ACC expands or the SEC down the road. And next thing you know, you got Iowa State and Kansas State kind of left holding the bag, and they'll be like, hey, Mike Oresco, can we join your league? Please?
Along with Boise State and Air Force and,
Right, or something like that. So I think the American Conference has a brighter future than the Big 12. Now, are they going to get the money that the Big 12 is currently getting? Probably not. But I think the American Conference is going to be healthier and better and probably will become the 5th best league in 8 years. And I think the question then becomes, if you're Mike Aresco, can you convince, and remember that the 8 years we keep bringing up is because of all the TV contracts come up and all this stuff comes up, but with the conferences and
from
so forth.
2023 to 2025, they're kind of staggered a little bit, but they're all up at about the same time.
Correct. The big thing you're hoping if you're the American Conference is, will the playoff expand? That's the thing that nobody talks about. Will the playoff expand to, say, 8 teams? Because if it does, now all of a sudden the American Conference has an opportunity, if the Big 12 implodes like we believe it will, now all of a sudden, yes, you're going to have the Power 4 automatic conference champions. But I could see a scenario, can Mike Aresco or the American Conference, if they prove to be a good league, get themselves a slot in that playoff? And that, you know what that means? More money.
More money. And
right.
I think that we've talked before with some folks who are in the know on this, that, there might be some interesting business to be done with the Mountain West Conference as well.
Sure, they have options. That's the thing. There are options out there. I don't know if they will do that or won't do that. Time will remain. But Look, the American is a very, very good league. I think from UCF's perspective, the good news is the league is intact. You don't lose Houston. You don't lose Cincinnati. You don't lose anybody. And so the league will stay strong from that standpoint. You still have USF, which is a growing rivalry. And I think Danny White has said this. He said this in the statement, and he said it over and over, and I agree. I think UCF, you don't need to worry. Don't worry about the conferences that you're in and where you're going and all that. Worry about yourself and try to become a top 25 athletic department. That's what Danny White's goal is, and I agree with it 100%. If you're a top 25 program in all sports, people are going to come knocking on your door down the road. That's the way it works. That's how Boise State is well known now. That's how Houston has all of a sudden become known with the success they've had in football. If UCF can do that in football and all the sports and basketball, basketball included, become a winner, then people are going to take notice. People are going to know who you are. And now you become more attractive. You become a brand, and now you become attractive to television and so forth. And it just kind of carries over. So that's what UCF's focus should always have been and is. And I don't think this is a bad day for UCF by any stretch, because I think you and I are in the same camp. I never believed UCF was going to get in. I thought they were always on the outside looking in. And my concern was that they were going to pluck a Houston and Cincinnati, for example, and maybe somebody else. And now all of a sudden the Americans got to expand and then the league's not as strong. But that didn't happen. So I think UCF's just fine. And I think that the institutions, like you said, will have the last laugh here, because I think the Big 12, they're on borrowed time and the clock's ticking.
Statement from Danny White. I wanted to get this on the record. Quote, "Since I arrived at UCF, I've been saying that we can be a nationally competitive top 25 athletics program. I still believe that today. Our future success does not depend on our conference affiliation. It is based on our unlimited potential. The American Athletic Conference is a great league, and we're very confident about our future in the American." End quote. That's from UCF Vice President and Director of Athletics Danny White. Here is Bob Bowlesby during the press conference after the Big 12 expansion fiasco.
I really feel good about the strength of our conference going forward. I think that this was really not a decision not to expand. This was an endorsement and a reinvestment in the strength of the 10 that we have.
And let's see, I got one more here. Oh, here's David Boren, the president of Oklahoma.
Our institutions of our very strong commitment to the Big 12, to the strength and stability of this conference. I have never heard, since I've been on the board, such strong commitments and such a unified sense of purpose, because I've seen speculation that there was discussion of individual schools, or there were a series of considerations of whether there was support, a supermajority for any admission of any particular school. There was no such discussion.
I tell you, frauds, all these guys in the Big 12, all of them, absolute frauds. We can thank God we can officially be done with this.
Over.
And one last word on this, along the lines of what Danny White was saying, was I mean, the TV networks controlled all this from the beginning. When ESPN and Fox came out against it, that was pretty much it. Yep. And I even keep going back to when you brought up Chris Fowler's tweet, who's essentially the spokesperson for college football on ESPN. But one of the UCF fans out there said to me, who shall remain nameless, I know who it is, but basically said, I want us to be in the Big 12 because if we don't get in this round of expansion, where's our lifeboat? To which I say, screw your lifeboat. Let's spend the next 8 years building a freaking aircraft carrier, man. Right? And let's make this, and let's build on the inside. Let's make it, instead of pleading with some conference, oh, please, please, please let us in and we'll be one of your little brothers and have to sell our souls to someone like Texas or Oklahoma. Let's be the big fish in the little pond now in the American and dominate that conference for the next decade. And then we'll see who's on top. All right. That's it with Big 12 expansion. No more. I'm done. I'm finished with this stupid freaking story. Okay.
How you really feel?
Let's chat about something that's a lot more fun, and that is RPIs. Big road weekend for UCF volleyball this weekend. They had to go to the Temple, and they had to do the UConn Temple road trip. They come out of there with a sweep of UConn in stores and a dramatic 5-set win at Temple. Temple was the highest-ranked American team in the RPI, but 5-set win for the Knights, 15-13 in the fifth. And I'm pulling up the box score right now. Knights, for the match, hit 232. Actually got out-hit by Temple, 254. Lost the first. Knights actually jumped out to a 2-0 lead before getting pushed to 5. But Kia Bright had what was her best offensive match of the season to this point with 25 kills. Taylor Gallert picked it up with 19. Allie Sable with 11. Double figures for UCF, so that was excellent. And by the way, UCF did that without Jayla Hervey, who did not play in that match. Wow. Here's why this is important. Now UCF is all alone in second place in the American. Well, actually in third place because SMU and Cincinnati are both 7-1 in the league and tied for first. UCF at 6-2, ahead of USF and Temple, who are both at 5-3. But even more importantly, that weekend vaults UCF up 22 spots in the RPI. Last week they were 80. This week they're 58th. They're the third highest AAC team in the RPI. Cincinnati is 45th. SMU is 47th. Look ahead to the schedule. Guess who's coming up? At home this weekend at the venue. It's Tulsa, who's not having a very good season on Friday night. But Sunday afternoon, the SMU Mustangs, who are tied in first place in the American, and the highest-ranked American team, the second highest team from the American in the RPI, comes to UCF in what is a tremendous match for the Knights, and a really big homestand here. As after that on Thursday, October 27th, 7 p.m., UCF against Cincinnati, who's the highest-ranked AAC team in the RPI, and also in first place right now in the conference. So this is a big 4-match stretch for UCF starting with this weekend, Eric. Really, really impressive victory for Todd Dagenet's team, capping off the weekend at Temple. Here's Todd on Monday after the Knights got home.
You look at the totality of the weekend, going in and facing all of the distraction that UConn had. First of all, being a great team, and then their basketball, their Midnight Madness. And there were a lot of things that were stacked against us there, yet we really responded in a mature way. And then heading into Sunday, being up 2-0, knowing that being up 2-0 meant nothing. And we knew that they were going to come back. That was not a shock. It was not a surprise. We knew that they were going to push hard. But to still have the mentality to be strong in the fifth set and to perform that well in the fifth set really was a great sign of maturity.
Yeah, I mean, that was their best performance, I think, of the season. They've been playing pretty well to this point, but I don't know. What say you, Eric? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, championship teams are made of, that kind of a road back-to-back like that.
Well, more specifically, I mean, go back to the Temple match. UCF jumped out to a 2-set lead, all right? Temple comes back, ties it up 2 sets on. You're like, oh, boy. And this was a story last year. UCF would cough up a 2-set lead. You're thinking, man, are they going to blow this 2-set lead? UCF gets off, regroups, gets off to a great start in the 5th set. But then Temple comes back, tries to keep fighting back. But UCF held them off, and they won the match in 5 sets. That was the thing that impressed me, was they faced adversity in that match. They were up 2 sets, and then Temple hit them with their best. And next thing you know, it's a do-or-die set. And maybe could turn into one of the defining moments of the season. And they hung in there and they found a way to win. I don't know if they would have won that, maybe last year, maybe even earlier this season, because we saw that. We were both there for the LSU match, where it was an emotional match and they kind of had nothing left by the 5th set. Well, they had plenty of left for that Temple match. That was the thing that jumped out to me. Such a wild match, intense match, to beat a very good Temple team in a significant conference game on the road. Huge win for the program there for this season and for that team moving forward. Now the key is you don't want to have a letdown. And it's strange because on paper it looks like Tulsa's they've had their struggles. Can't overlook them. That's still a talented team. I mean, that's a very talented program that's been to the NCAA tournament. I'm stunned that they have
were
struggled.
Our bugaboo for years back in the Conference USA.
Yeah,
days.
they could be the kind of the surprise disappointment, if you will, in this league, but it tells you how deep this league is. But you have to take care of that match first before you can even start looking to SMU on Sunday, which is obviously setting up to be a huge match. Because obviously, look, you're right there for the regular season championship, which is the obvious way to go to get to the NCAA tournament. You don't want it to come down to a committee. So,
right.
And so that's this stretch, will define if UCF can win the might help define if UCF wins the championship or not. A lot of ways. Playing SMU at home. You got Cincinnati at home with Jordan Thompson coming to town. Very interesting stretch here for this team and how they handle that and how they handle this prosperity and it because it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a battle. And but heck of a weekend to win 2 on the road up in the Northeast.
Yeah, so like I said, the next 4 matches at home, including coming up this week for UCF volleyball. Tulsa Friday at 7 and SMU Sunday at 1. So be sure to be there at the venue, especially for that SMU match. We need a lot of fans out at that one. Women's soccer. After the loss to UConn 3-0 in Stores, they met up at Temple in Philadelphia, and got the victory over the Owls 2-0. Key victory there for UCF women's soccer because it was one that they were pretty much expected to get because Temple is not very good. They're dead last in the American, haven't won a game in the conference yet this season. In fact, they've lost every game. They haven't even tied anyone yet. But UCF now 9 points back in the standings in 7th place. Or actually, excuse me, not 7th place, but they're essentially tied for 5th with USF and Cincinnati. Problem for UCF women's soccer right now is they're running out of matches. They are home this coming Thursday, October the 20th, for Cincinnati. That's going to be a very big game.
Big match. Big match.
At home, and both these teams are tied in the standings at 7 points. And then East Carolina, Sunday, October 23rd. East Carolina has only gotten 1 draw, all the others losses. But then we talked about that tough road stretch at Tulsa, at Memphis, 2 teams that are in the top 4 in the conference. So these points in the standings are just hanging there waiting for you to take them. But if you're good enough, you got to get them. Opportunity right now for UCF as it stands, it's 3 points in 4 matches. If you're able to win all 4 in a row, that's 12 points to add to your 7 that you currently have. But you got to start getting results now because we're running out down to the last 4 matches of the season, the last 2 weekends, and you got to come up big against Cincinnati on October the 20th. RPI, UCF, like I said, still strong at 46, but when you're one match over 500, that's not gonna look too good to the committee if you're having to try and sneak in on an at-large.
No, that's the thing. This is the time. You got to go on a run here. Cincinnati's the defending American Conference Tournament champions, too. They're in a bubble situation, too. Two teams are very similar from that standpoint. But, yeah, I mean, it starts with these 2 home matches, Cincinnati and East Carolina. Then you go on the road to finish the regular season. You want to get yourself qualified for the conference tournament. It's a mess, I mean, to figure out who the 6 teams will be that make the conference tournament. Number 1, Jeff. I mean, that's the thing. You got to make sure you get yourself in there.
Yeah, because right now it's a 3-way tie, and one of those teams is going to get left out if the season ended today. That would be UCF, but you got to get those results now.
Now, it's worth noting in UCF's first half of the schedule has been definitely front-loaded. The schedule, they had to play at USF. They had to play at Connecticut. They played the SMU, who's been at the top of the league. So they do have those tough teams. Now, Memphis, who they finished the regular season with, there's another team in the bubble. I mean, this has been an interesting year for the American Conference. You haven't had the dominant teams, although I think UConn is the favorite, but it's been a very much more depth into the American Conference than maybe in the past so far in the 4 years. And it's usually been a 1 or 2 team race and stuff like that, but it's much more in depth this year, which is good for the league in a way. But we hope to have in the next few weeks, right around conference tournament time, depending on how things shape out, Chris Henderson, who does a lot of the women's soccer coverage and projections, he's going to help us preview maybe that conference tournament, use UCF in there, and kind of what UCF's going to have to do in the NCAA tournament, because you're right, Jeff. They got to get some wins here in the next 4 matches of the regular season, and I think they got to do well in the conference tournament to get themselves into the tournament. If you kind of split games here and there, I don't think that's going to cut it to make it into the field. 46 is kind of right on the line. That's on the line for an at-large. So, I mean, obviously you want to get into the conference tournament and you want to win the tournament. That's the goal. That way you automatically get in. But you also, if you can't win the conference tournament, the next best thing you got to do is, I think you got to win out or at least go 3-1 in the next 4 matches, maybe 3-0-1 in the next 4 matches, and get yourself into the conference tournament in a very good momentum. And then get yourself into the final, at least, I think, to feel really good about your chances. So the good news is, though, it's in your hands, or maybe in this case, in your feet. It's in their control, right? I think Coach Ada would tell you that it's in their control. If it's either they're going to get it done or they don't get it done. It's not like they need somebody else's help. They have it in their hands to control their own fate and their future.
Yeah, but like we said, we got to get those results now with starting with this weekend coming up. Men's soccer came up short against Stetson in DeLand 2-1. Of their 8 losses this year for the men's soccer team, 6 of them have been by 1 goal. They have 2 remaining home matches. The next one is against UConn on October the 22nd. UConn right now in first place, or tied for first place with Cincinnati and USF in the men's soccer standings. The Knights have 2 conference matches remaining after that, at Temple October 29th and at home for Cincinnati on November the 5th. And 1 non-conference match against FIU. That's coming up on this coming Tuesday, October 25th, down in Miami. So if you're some of the Knights in Miami, see if you can come out and support the Knights for that one. News, by the way, on the schedule, the Wednesday, November 2nd match, which was slated in Boca Raton against Florida Atlantic. That's the second to last match of the season. That match has been canceled. So the Knights men's soccer team has had 3 games canceled this year, and they've lost 6 of their 8, and they've had 6 of their 8 losses by 1-goal game. Just nothing but bad luck for this team. But hopefully they can wrap it up with a couple. And believe it or not, looking at the schedule right now, if you get hot in those last 3 conference matches, you got them against really good competition, but there's just a few matches left, and obviously you only play 7 conference matches in men's soccer. So, trying to see how we'll see how they close out the season with these key 2 of their last 3 at home, 2 of their last 3 conference matches at home. All right, Eric. So, big weekend coming up. Like we talked about, a lot of road stuff happening with the UConn football game. What are you going to be paying the most attention to?
Well, I'm looking at circling that Sunday.
Volleyball match, yeah.
Well, not only that, you got the last regular season home match for women's soccer going on at the same time.
Senior day.
Against East Carolina, senior day, correct. It's always interesting when you have the 2 sporting events kind of going at the same time. It's always tricky.
We're in mid-October, and it's already senior day. We're already having a senior day.
Isn't that wild?
Unbelievable. They're right, man. They need to extend this schedule.
It's just kind of interesting how that works out. Obviously, the SMU match is at 1 o'clock. That's a big match. Hopefully, UCF can get through Tulsa and set up that showdown, and who knows, maybe put themselves in position to play Cincinnati for first place in the conference. That's a huge match. I know you're looking forward to being there for that. And then, as I mentioned, women's soccer, big home stretch here. Cincinnati Thursday night's a huge match, and then obviously the last home match of the regular season for the seniors, as you mentioned. They will be taking on East Carolina at 1 o'clock. My suggestion
from
is
the volleyball match, unfortunately. I wish they would stagger that, but anyway.
Yeah, it's tricky. I've done this in the past where I would go to both and kind of pick my spots. There's always that intermission in volleyball. So I've done that where I would go to volleyball and then maybe head over to soccer during halftime. And then obviously the matches will kind of dictate itself, depending on how lengthy the volleyball match goes. You might have time to watch the last 20, 30 minutes of the women's soccer match.
Yeah, it's also tricky on a Sunday because those teams have to get home and they have flights to catch. Correct. So it's not like you can do like a 1 o'clock and then a 4 o'clock. If you're going to stagger them, you got to do it like one of them has to go at like 11 a.m. and no one wants to play that early.
Especially soccer, not in the conditions with the heat and everything. I don't think they want to do that. So,
although it should be nice this weekend, it should be in the 70s this weekend. So
that's the one I would be looking at and to see how big home weekend for volleyball and women's soccer that I think will help tell the picture of where both teams postseason aspirations down the road here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the volleyball match on Sunday against SMU, and I'm really anxious to see how UCF responds on the football field, going up to what should be a miserable East Hartford, Connecticut, to play UConn. How do you respond after a heartbreaking home loss with 1 second to go? We're going to find out the character of that team here in the next couple days. So, all right, Eric, give us an update. What else are you working on this week?
I'm just going to watch all that. I'm going to be on Eric Lopez Elo for the latest on Twitter. Who knows? I might try to sneak out there for that Sunday, do a little bit of both, depending on how things go the next few days. That might be an appearance there because, I haven't been to a women's soccer match this year, which is stunning. It's kind of weird how the schedule's worked out that way.
Yeah.
Volleyball, I've been to one. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can plan something out. I know where you're going to be, but maybe I can cover for you and do a little soccer and then hang into volleyball. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But
yeah, I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and you can hopefully hear from Coach Sahadak as well on that as well too. So. And then, like you said, I'm going to be at volleyball Friday night and then Sunday afternoon doing PA at the venue. Make sure you come out for that. And where can people reach out to you, Eric?
Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter. That's the best place to do it and see my latest developments.
All right. And you can hit me up at Jeff_Sharon on Twitter and hit us both up at UCF_Banneret. So, by the way, don't forget, we just released our bonus show, our interview your interview, Eric, with John Roddick, the director of UCF tennis. and Andy Roddick's older brother. Make sure you check that out wherever you subscribe to podcasts, be it iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Don't forget to hit us up on Facebook at Black and Gold Banneret, and subscribe to our email newsletter at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Thanks again, Eric. We'll talk to you later, all right?
Always a pleasure, Jeffrey.
All right, and for Eric Lopez, my name is Jeff Sharon. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you again next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.